Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jordan Giesecke, and this is The Limiting Factor. After the We Robot event, Tesla hinted that the Cybercab will use 4680s. And at Battery Day, they hinted that it would use an LFP chemistry. Does that mean the Cybercab will use an LFP 4680 produced in-house by Tesla? Many would assume the answer would automatically be no, because LFP battery cells are known for having relatively low energy density. And due to that, EV battery packs always use LFP battery cells in a prismatic or rectangular form factor to squeeze in as much energy into the battery pack as possible. That is, an LFP 4680 battery pack could be one of the lowest energy density battery packs on the market. However, an LFP 4680 battery pack would also have benefits. For example, among other features, it could end up being the lowest cost battery pack on the market, making it perfect for vehicles like the Cybercab. So today, I'm going to make a comprehensive case for the LFP 4680. Before we begin, a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, YouTube members, and Twitter subscribers, as well as Rebellionaire.com. They specialize in helping investors manage concentrated positions. Rebellionaire can help with covered calls, risk management, and creating a money master plan from your financial first principles. First, regardless of form factor, what's the likelihood that Tesla produces a battery cell in-house that uses an LFP or iron-based chemistry? In short, it appears likely. A few weeks ago, the X account SETI Park discovered the patent application for Tesla's cathode production process, which included the production of LFP cathode material, which is the material that's used to coat the metal cathode foils that go into a lithium-ion battery cell. I reposted that patent application with my own thoughts, and Drew Baglino, the former senior vice president of power and energy at Tesla, responded. He said it would be prudent for LFP supply chains in the US and Europe to adopt the approach highlighted in the patent. That's because, fully scaled, it can produce LFP cathode material at a lower cost than it can be imported from China. That is, reading between the lines, it's likely that Tesla intends to use this process in their US cathode production facility. So I decided to look further into the patent, and started by looking up the inventors on LinkedIn. One of the inventors, Yulong Liu, indicated that in the past 3 years that Tesla has run 4 multi-ton pilot trials for LFP cathode material, and 1 production trial that was 100 tons, which, by my estimate, would be enough for several hundred vehicles. That is, it was a relatively large batch that would have been produced on commercial-scale production equipment. That signaled to me that Tesla has a strong intent to fully commercialize in-house LFP cathode material production, and by implication, LFP battery cells. So if Tesla produced LFP battery cells, what form factor could we expect them to produce? Prismatic or cylindrical? Let's take a look at the history. Nearly 5 years ago at Battery Day, Tesla said that it would take a diversified cathode approach, and LFP batteries were part of that strategy. Notably, they never specifically said they'd make an LFP 4680, just that the LFP chemistry was part of their overall strategy. Then, 3 years ago, in the Q4 2021 earnings call, Drew and Elon made several comments on form factor. Drew said, quote, "Should everything be 4680? It doesn't have to be. In the end, it's about cost competitiveness and scalability of manufacturing. When you compare an iron cell with a nickel cell, there are some physics-based differences in what happens in certain corner cases that drive different form factors. So the 4680, isn't like the ultimate form factor for all things. There's other form factors that could be better for an iron cell, for example." End quote. And Elon followed up with, quote, "Yeah, we don't use 4680 at all for the iron upgrade cells." End quote. Many people assumed that what Tesla was saying here was that they would never produce an LFP 4680 cell. My interpretation was that they were simply saying that they were currently using the prismatic form factor, but that when the time came for Tesla to produce their own LFP battery cells, they would look at the requirements of each use case and pick the form factor and chemistry that made the most sense. After that, there was 2 years of radio silence on the LFP 4680. Then, about 6 months ago, Steve Levine of The Information reported that Tesla planned on introducing 4 versions of the 4680 in 2026, including a workhorse cell that would be used for the Cybercab, as well as versions of the Cybertruck and Tesla Semi. An LFP chemistry would of course be perfect for a workhorse cell due to its high cycle life. And in my view, it would make sense to put the LFP chemistry in a 4680 form factor to make the ultimate workhorse cell. I'll explain why in a moment. Before we cover that, some people might point out that Tesla's allegedly purchased equipment from CATL to produce prismatic LFP battery cells in-house using a wet coating process, and those battery cells would be used for Tesla's Megapacks. If that's the case, couldn't Tesla use those prismatic cells not just for Megapacks, but also for EVs? In short, it's possible, but low likelihood. That's because, as I covered in the Q4 earnings call video, the prismatic battery cells used in Megapacks are typically much larger than the prismatic battery cells used for EVs. 50 to 200 amp-hour cells are used for EVs, and 200 to 500 amp-hour cells are used for grid storage. That's because on the EV side, smaller battery cells are needed so that they can be wired in series to achieve the hundreds of volts necessary for charging. On the Megapack side, voltage isn't an issue, because a Megapack contains thousands of battery cells and the target voltage is around 400 to 500 volts. That means larger battery cells are better because it reduces the number of manufacturing operations to wire those battery cells into the Megapack. This should help emphasize why Drew said in the Q4 2021 earnings call that not everything has to be a 4680. In the end, it's about cost, scalability, and the physics requirements of each use case. An EV battery has different requirements than a grid storage battery. The question is, what form factor and chemistry is best for the Cybercab? The number one requirement for the battery pack in the Cybercab will be its cost in dollars per kilowatt hour per cycle. That is, the goal will be to use the cheapest battery pack available with the highest number of cycles. An LFP 4680 could dominate in that metric. That's because it would use the lowest cost chemistry and the lowest cost form factor and use the lowest cost manufacturing process. I'll elaborate a bit on each one of those. With regards to chemistry, LFP battery cells are the cheapest on the market. It varies over time, but usually they're $10 to $20 per kilowatt hour cheaper than nickel cells and can easily hit 4,000 cycles as opposed to less than 1,500 or so for nickel. That means the cost per kilowatt hour per cycle of LFP cells is usually about 70 to 80% less than nickel cells. With regards to form factor, cylindrical LFP cells are slightly cheaper to manufacture than prismatic LFP cells due to factors like cheaper packaging and safety mechanisms. With regards to manufacturing costs, Tesla's dry electrode coating process should be the cheapest on the market. But that of course depends on if they can successfully ramp that coating process for the cathode, which we're still waiting for updates on. What about the cost disadvantages of an LFP 4680? First, 4680 cells are smaller than prismatic cells. That means more cells and therefore welds would be required, for example, to make a battery pack out of 4680 cells. Second, China has a stranglehold on refined battery materials. That means larger economies of scale, which means lower costs. Tesla's supply chain is still small by comparison, which means Tesla may pay more for battery materials to build in-house battery cells than Chinese companies would. With that said, the extra cost from things like additional welding operations would be small. Tesla's in the process of vertically integrating their supply chain to reduce costs, and by using in-house cells, they wouldn't have to pay shipping, tariffs, and profit margins. That is, there's a good chance that, all things considered, a Tesla LFP 4680 pack would be the cheapest EV battery pack on the market. And, failing that, at the very least, they should be able to produce LFP 4680 packs cheaper than they could purchase comparable battery packs that use prismatic LFP cells from China. Besides the cell and pack costs in terms of dollars per kilowatt hour per cycle, what about other battery-related costs that might affect the lifetime cost of an EV? Some might argue that in the long run, Tesla would be better off using nickel-based battery cells because they would have higher energy density and therefore weigh less and increase the efficiency of the vehicle. That is, the assumption would be that nickel batteries would be less expensive over time because they would use less electricity. Is that true? Not as far as I can tell. Currently, nickel packs cost about $20 per kilowatt hour more than LFP packs. And, as I showed earlier, they also have much lower cycle life, which means that LFP cells have a cost per kilowatt hour per cycle that's about 70 to 80% lower than nickel cells. But what if the nickel cells could match the cycle life of the LFP cells? It is possible, but it would add to the cost of the nickel cells because they would require higher grade materials. But let's say that Tesla could produce a high cycle life nickel cell for the same cost as a standard nickel cell. What would the lifetime cost, including electricity, look like for LFP versus nickel cells that each have the same cycle life? On screen are some back-of-the-napkin calculations using a Cybercab as an example. The upshot is that a nickel battery pack would save about $715 of electricity over the life of the vehicle, but the cost of that battery would be about $720 more than an LFP battery pack. Yes, there are other potential cost savings with a lighter weight nickel pack, such as smaller motors and lighter weight suspension. But on the other hand, Tesla could potentially use the same technology toolkit that could be used in high cycle life nickel cells to make their LFP cells last several times longer as well, lowering their cost per kilowatt hour per cycle even further than it already is. That is, it's not obvious that there would be cost savings with a nickel pack, and if there is, it would probably be small. So I'd say the simplest solution is the most likely, which is to use tried and trusted LFP packs for the Cybercab rather than high-end nickel-based packs. And that's not even taking into account the other benefits of LFP battery packs. More on that in a moment. As a final note on cost, proponents of nickel cells might also argue that they would have a higher recycling value than LFP battery cells, which would reduce the lifetime costs and reduce the cost of nickel battery packs in the future because recycled materials are cheaper. In my view, it won't work out like that. That's because recyclers will probably have to pay more for battery packs that contain nickel, and because the recycled nickel will be sold at the market price of nickel in general. That is, nickel is fundamentally more expensive than iron because iron is orders of magnitude more abundant. Not only is iron cheap, but LFP cathodes are also non-toxic. That means you can throw away an LFP battery pack at the end of its life and have fewer concerns about toxic materials leaching into the environment. With that said, LFP batteries will still be recycled to extract the valuable copper, lithium, and aluminum. That is, for the most part, just like nickel packs, it's unlikely that many LFP packs will end up in a landfill. This brings up another reason why Tesla would choose LFP over nickel cells. Almost all of the raw materials that it would use are readily available, or will soon be readily available from within the U.S. or U.S. allies and trade partners at low cost and high volume. That's because Tesla now has their own cathode plant and will soon have their own lithium refinery, so they can bypass most of the Chinese supply chain. The only piece of the puzzle that's left to vertically integrate is graphite refining, and in the next few years, I expect Tesla will do just that, or at least partner with a company to produce graphite in North America. That's because if Tesla plans on building millions of Cybercabs per year in North America, with the current geopolitics, it would be a poor strategic move to be overly reliant on the Chinese supply chain for what will be one of their most mission-critical and profitable products ever. As a final note on nickel versus LFP battery cells, interestingly, there is a chance that Tesla could incorporate a dash of nickel into their LFP battery cells. That's because Tesla recently published a patent application on a hybrid cathode that has surprising benefits. As Battery Bulletin explains here, by adding a small amount of mid-voltage cobalt-free nickel cathode material to LFP cathode, say 10%, it could increase the cycle life of the battery cells without adding much cost. My guess is 2 to 3%. The resulting higher cycle life and negligible cost increase would result in a battery cell that has a lower cost per kilowatt hour per cycle than a typical LFP battery cell. For those wondering, yes, it would also slightly increase the energy density, but the effect would be minimal. I haven't read through the patent yet in detail, but based on this image, it looks like it would be maybe a few percent. While that would be useful, as this image shows, the main benefit of the hybrid cathode would be the increase in longevity, which is dramatic. While we're on the topic of energy density, what kind of energy density and range could we expect out of an LFP 4680? As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the main argument against an LFP 4680 cell is that it would have relatively low energy density. The image on screen was provided by Nigel Taylor of BatteryDesign.net for the energy density of dozens of LFP and NMC prismatic cells. That is, controlling for form factor, it gives us an idea of the difference in energy density between LFP and nickel battery cells. NMC prismatic cells reach about 285 watt-hours per kilogram, whereas LFP prismatic cells max out at around 186 watt-hours per kilogram. Let's say that more realistic figures for usable energy density would be, respectively, more like 260 watt-hours per kilogram and 165 watt-hours per kilogram. That's a ratio of 0.63 for LFP to NMC. Now that we've controlled for form factor using prismatic cells, let's apply that ratio to cylindrical cells. Cylindrical cells, such as the Generation 2 4680 and Panasonic 2170, have a usable energy density of 259 and 260 watt-hours per kilogram, which roughly aligns with the 260 watt-hour per kilogram usable energy density figure I estimated for a prismatic nickel-based cell. That means in order to estimate the range of an LFP vehicle, we just have to multiply the range of a vehicle that uses 4680 or 2170 cylindrical cells by 0.63. Starting with the Model 3 that uses Panasonic 2170 cells, that vehicle has an EPA range of 363 miles. 0.63 times 363 is 229 miles of range for a hypothetical Model 3 that uses LFP 4680 cells. In my view, that's sandbagged and a worst-case scenario. Why? Let's take a look at another comparable, the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck uses Generation 2 4680 cells that have a similar energy density to the Panasonic cells in the Model 3. But the battery pack it uses has about 4% better energy density than the Model 3 battery pack. Furthermore, the Cybertruck battery pack is overbuilt and ruggedized compared to the battery pack in the Model 3. I'm not sure how much that would be worth in terms of energy density, but let's say 2%. Third, my understanding is that the NMC cell used as a comparison in this image from BatteryDesign.net contains silicon. That's as opposed to the Generation 2 4680, which didn't use silicon, meaning it was handicapped compared to the prismatic cell comparison. Let's say the silicon is worth about a 9% energy density increase. If we adjust for all those factors, it means we could likely add about 15% to the 229-mile range of an LFP 4680 Model 3 to reach 263 miles of range. Let's take a look at other Tesla vehicles. For the Cybertruck, an LFP 4680 might barely eke by. The longest-range Cybertruck currently has 325 miles of range. If we multiply that by 0.63 and adjust for the silicon factor I mentioned above for a 9% increase, the range would be about 223 miles. But, of course, the standard-range Cybertruck will have fewer motors than current versions. It may have different tires, and Tesla might also be able to squeeze in a few more 4680s into the Cybertruck pack. So it is possible the Cybertruck could use an LFP 4680, but it's not a shoo-in. Moving on to the Semi, the LFP 4680 could easily provide the 300 miles of rated range for the shorter range version. That's because the current Semi has about 500 miles of rated range. And even using the bearish 0.63 ratio above, that would mean 315 miles of rated range. Where the LFP 4680 is most viable is the Cybercab. The Model 3 has a peak energy efficiency of 4.8 miles per kilowatt hour, whereas the Cybercab is expected to have an efficiency of at least 5.5 miles per kilowatt hour, or 15% higher. Earlier, I estimated that a Model 3 with an LFP 4680 pack could hit 263 miles of range. If the Cybercab had a similar pack-to-vehicle size ratio with 15% greater efficiency, that would mean a Cybercab using LFP 4680s could reach 302 miles of range. That is, it would far exceed Tesla's goal of 200 miles of range. And so, I expect the Cybercab will have a battery pack that's very undersized for the vehicle to maximize energy efficiency. That also means that if Tesla chose to, they could put a nickel 4680 battery pack in the Cybercab and hit 400 to 500 miles of range with one layer of battery cells. However, for now, 200 miles of range is enough to cover 99% of trips, so it's not necessary to install a nickel battery pack that costs 20% more to cover 1% of trips. But they could do that deeper in the future as the Cybercab saturates the ride-hailing market. Before I close out the video, let's look at some other perks of an LFP 4680 cell. First, LFP is inherently cobalt-free, meaning it has fewer public relations issues than nickel batteries, which use cobalt for stability. Second, an LFP battery pack using a 4680 cell could end up being the safest EV battery pack on the market. That's for three reasons. First, LFP cells are lower energy density than nickel cells, meaning less energy to contain for a given weight or volume. Second, 4680 cells are much smaller than prismatic cells, which should slow the spread of fire through the battery pack because there's a higher ratio of inert material to energy storing material. Third, prismatic cells are usually made from aluminum, which has a much lower melting point than the high-carbon steel that's used for 4680 cells. The third perk of 4680 cells is that, although the higher proportion of non-active structural material in an LFP 4680 pack results in lower energy density, it also likely means greater structural rigidity than a typical LFP prismatic pack, which potentially means less structural reinforcement is required around the battery pack. That would mean slightly less weight and potentially more range than expected. Fourth, it's easier to control the temperature and temperature gradient of smaller battery cells, which means an LFP 4680 pack may last longer than a prismatic LFP pack. Fifth, LFP cells are more durable to a 0 to 100% duty cycle. That means even though LFP packs store less energy and therefore have less range than nickel packs, more of their energy capacity can be utilized each day without a serious impact on overall battery life. That means for commercial use cases, in terms of real-world usage, LFP batteries end up having more like 15% less range than nickel packs, rather than 30% less range. In summary, an LFP 4680 battery pack appears to be not only viable, but could potentially be the lowest cost, safest, and most durable battery pack in the automotive industry. Although the range an LFP 4680 provides might be mediocre, that wouldn't be the priority for a workhorse-type cell. For vehicles that require more range and less durability, Tesla can use higher nickel cell chemistries. As for when we could see an LFP 4680, I've been saying for about 5 years that it's at least a couple years away. But now, if everything goes well with the ramp of nickel-based 4680 cells this year, I'd say that it's now likely that we see the LFP 4680 next year. If Tesla does continue to run into issues with that production ramp, they could use third-party prismatic LFP packs or nickel-based 4680 packs in the Cybercab temporarily. But that wouldn't make sense to me in the long run. If things go very well, which I'm not holding my breath for, they could use the LFP 4680 in a short-range version of the Cybertruck by the end of this year. But I view that as unlikely. As always, I could certainly be wrong here about Tesla's plans for an LFP 4680, but all the information I see is pointing in that direction. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting the channel by using the links in the description. Also, consider following me on X. I often use X as a testbed for sharing ideas, and X subscribers, like my Patreon supporters, generally get access to my videos a week early. On that note, a special thanks to my YouTube members, X subscribers, and all the other patrons listed in the credits. I appreciate all of your support, and thanks for tuning in.